Hello and welcome back to another Starcraft 2 commentary. Today we're on the map Daybreak, and we've got a game between Tod and Minimath. Tod as our blue Protoss player, and Minimath as our green Zerg player. I always forget how to say Zerg, and I have no idea why. So as I said, we're here on the map Daybreak. I've casted a game of Minimath's yesterday, where he won in a ZVZ matchup, and that was somewhat interesting, just to see virtually the same units being built at virtually the same timings. That was fantastic good fun. On the other hand, this is much more interesting. So Tod coming out with a pylon, and then he's just going to go down on scout. I believe you can only spawn in cross-positional spaces in this map, so I imagine he's going to be doing some kind of quite early harass, given we're only 1 minute in. I usually don't see that scout till sort of, you know, somewhere around the 2 minute 30 mark or so. So that's going to be fun. Minimath coming out with his overlords. Now, something I mentioned in my last video is I've been requested to make less R noises, less noises, because they seem to really irritate people. So I'm endeavouring to do that. So I apologise if some gets slipped through, because I'm enjoying myself, frankly, and I'm hoping you guys enjoy watching as much as I enjoy casting this. So spawning pool coming up first, and that's just going to be to prevent any kinds of harass. Often Zerg players like to come out basically expansion first, but very often with cannon harass and various other kinds of harass, those Zerglings are needed, particularly if they're scouted early. And in this kind of map where you you know exactly where you are going to be, where your opponent is exactly, you can prevent that. So Tod manages to place down his pylon, and Minimath is going to go up to the 3rd position and place his expansion here. Yep, and that seems to be becoming more and more of the norm. Where the there goes that pylon being cancelled, where the Zerg player will place down their 3rd base before their natural expansion, just because the Protoss players and often Terran players will build either pylons or whatever quite early on and prevent them. They'll sit there and run around and build buildings and do all kinds of bizarre stuff. So, and because most, even in relatively short games, most Zerg players will want to have 3 bases, because it's interesting, because the Protoss players and the Terran players tend to go with things like Forge Fast Expands and one Rex Expand. That's become near enough the default. And because Zerg players always like to have 1 more base than their Protoss or Terran opponents, that means that a Zerg player, no matter how big or small the game, they will tend to want to have at least 3 expansions coming out within sort of that 5 minute mark. And here we are, 4 minutes 30, here comes that 3rd expansion. And as suspected, here's a forge, do a forge fast expand to build a nexus, and then very quickly a photon cannon is usually sitting behind a gateway just to protect it. And I've seen a couple of games recently where then there is an extra pylon, rather than being placed here, it's being placed here, or again placing the cyber core just to protect that photon cannon. I casted a game the other day where there were 2 photon cannons entirely surrounded, so the gateways would actually have to be taken out before those photon cannons, and that will just prevent any kind of Zergling harass. Speaking of, is that Zergling harass? Just some overlords. I'm going to say it's somewhat more relaxing trying to cast Protoss games and Zerg games rather than the Terran ones, because the Terran ones, there seems to be drops heading all over the place, and you have to sort of keep all eyes on the minimap simultaneously. So this first expansion in the 3rd position is very, very quickly becoming saturated. The main just unsaturated, and the 3rd just about to pop. And Tod is a fantastic player, and I assume he knows that as soon as he saw that one being placed down, that the 3rd's going to be placed down, because it's become near enough standard anyway. So what type of strategy is he using? He's doing a robo facility, which would be used for building that Overseer. I assume the Overseer is just going to pop down and check to confirm everything he already knows. And those Zerglings are just running around, just double checking, make sure there's no funny business coming out. So what are we going to do? I imagine we're probably going to see Stalker Heavy, and perhaps managing to try and go to some Colossus. So dropping down 2 more gateways. I imagine on 2 gates he's going to be trying to sit somewhere around the 7 gate. There's a 3rd gate coming out. He's got the 4th gate there. And I imagine he's going to be jumping onto 7 or so, just in order to get some early game pressure, early 7 gate pressure. But we will see. Out comes that Immortal, which of course is just fantastic against things like roaches, I believe. Watches all the Starcraft 2 people come out and hit me. But you know, that's part of the reason I'm enjoying doing these commentaries, is it means I get to see other kinds of games, different games that I wouldn't ordinarily play, and see what kind of strategies are currently being used. Here comes the Pylon, which is going to be used for some pressure, perhaps into this base or this base. The Pylon, of course, would allow you to use that warp gate technology, which is almost out. Which will just allow him to warp in some units and come along, because of course a handful of zealots will be able to knock out an hatchery relatively quickly. Out comes this Overlord, just checking what he's got, and here we are. There's those, as predicted, 7 gates. Oh yeah, who's the man? Not me. But 7 gates, I'm quite happy about that. Little dancing Immortal. So I imagine these are going to be turned into warp gates. And the sentries, I imagine, are just going to be sitting here just in case any speedling run-bys come by and try and shoot in. No? Or are they going to push out to... Where are they going to? Push out to this point and then warp in some stalkers, perhaps? Speaking of, what have we got? We have... Yep. We have some zealots and we have some sentries. Now, Minimath going once again, very roach heavy as he was in the last game. Roach is very, very effective, you know, unless you've got air units. So these Immortals, it's actually quite a nice mix of unit composition. Ground level armor level 1 coming out, quite a nice mix coming along. Secondary Pylon coming out for warp-ins, just in case one gets taken out. And I imagine he's going to hold off for sort of 1 more warp-in, and then come along, knock out that 3rd base. On the other hand, there is a very large push of roaches coming his way. Ooh, a very, very large push. That's a terrifying thought. So, and of course his army is completely out of position, so he's going to run in and check that 3rd. And I think when he sees that 3rd, he knows, runs in, he sees that there's no 3rd, so where have all of Tod's resources gone? They have gone in a push, which is heading right towards him. I think he knows that, he realizes that. And in comes that push. He has to be careful because roaches and speedlings are very fast, especially on creep. And he should better, I think he's going to concentrate, just try and take out this expansion as soon as possible, using those sentries in order to create some force fields to prevent reinforcements coming through. Takes out the expansion, prevents the reinforcements, and I imagine as soon as these force fields dissipate, he's going to be retreating. Yep, creating some force fields here to prevent the forward units coming in. And here comes a secondary warp in coming in from behind just to help to sandwich some of these roaches. But he should know that's coming. So lost his expansion. Oh dear. Which is really the kind of position that the Protoss player wants to be in, where he has 2 bases against a 2-base Zerg. Managed to survive against those roaches, however, and stops to knock out an Overlord. And just retreating because he knows he can't stay there very long. You know, these reinforcements are going to continue to build up, and he will eventually be taken out. Out comes another pylon. That's interesting. I think he was expecting the roaches to come up. And if you've got a lot of units warping in and you lose that pylon, you lose those troops, and that can be very, very devastating. So now, Minimath forced to come out with his 3rd base again, and in retaliation, he is coming straight for a counterattack. And whenever you push out, you should always expand, so here's this expansion. And I think Minimath knows that. That expansion gets cancelled, gets denied. On the other hand, that's okay, you know, that's absolutely fine because they're sitting 2 base all, which, you know, effectively puts Tod ahead. Here comes out this 3rd again. You know, so when you push out, always expand, but you know, when you're attacked, always retaliate because there's usually an expansion, you know, a very, very vulnerable expansion coming out, which is, you know, as two pro players like Minimath and Tod know, that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, if I was Tod, I would, of course, the moment you knock out that expansion, you know that within a couple of minutes that expansion is going to be rebuilt, so I really wouldn't be surprised if he did what he almost did there and then runs in and tries to take out that expansion. On the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, a handful of zealots coming in can take out a hatchery in no time. You know, you'll lose the zealots, but you know, a handful of zealots for taking out the hatchery, that's certainly worth it. And sadly, it looks like he is going to lose these pylons, but that's okay, they've served their purposes. Now, he comes with a third hatchery. Now, the main difference is, between these two players here is that when this expansion was denied a few minutes ago, that was cancelled, so most of the resources come back, whereas here, the expansion was allowed to complete and finish, and that's a lot of time that there wasn't any mining, that's a lot of resources that were used on building the hatchery. And to try and make up for this, I think Minimath, you know, has decided to come out with a very, very quick fourth. Now, if he can hold off and prevent Tod from going out and expanding or doing anything else or knock out this expansion, when this fourth expansion is up, he is going to be in a tremendously powerful position. Now, where are we sitting at? We're sitting at 166 to 126. So if Minimath pushes, he could take out this expansion, depending on how far out of position Tod's army is, and it is currently very, very out of position. And I was talking over the top of a roach push right into the main, knocking out the entire probe front line. So, pushing on two fronts simultaneously. I need to look out for that kind of stuff. So, roach push on the third, roach push on the main, and I think Minimath has got this. He has got this. He's taken out the main, he's taking out the probes, he's forced the probes to retreat, he is taken over the third rather, and now Minimath's fourth base and third base is up and will be saturated, and even if he managed to defeat this roach push, which he wouldn't be able to, he would have been economically so far behind he'd lost. Well, thank you very, very much for listening to me talking about StarCraft. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed watching it, and I hope you guys will join me tomorrow, when I believe we've got a game between Heypro and Poopy. Cheers, thank you.